Last night, Nintendo finally shared their plans for the Nintendo Switch 2, giving us an hour-long presentation where we saw Switch 2 games, we finally got a release date, and we got the price of the console. When it was finished though, and we were basking in the glow of a newly announced From Software game, and of course, the announcement of a brand new Mario Kart, there was one small caveat that started doing the rounds online. The fact that Nintendo are actually raising prices to a frankly ridiculous level when it comes to how much their games are going to cost for the Switch 2. Now, the console itself is going to retail at $449 or £395 when it releases on June 5th. Now, while that was already a little bit higher than some people expected, the big awful surprise was that some games, including Mario Kart World, are going to be priced at $80 for the digital edition or $90 if you want to buy it physical. And that, my friends, in my opinion anyway, is a way to instantly kill hype dead for your new console. And of course, if you're wondering, for us Brits, that means that the digital edition of Mario Kart World is going to cost £67, and if you want to buy it physical, it'll set you back £75. Now, while you might have expected some first-party titles on the Nintendo Switch 2 to match the higher-end prices of the competition over on Xbox and PlayStation 5, which is currently at a cap of $70, I don't think anyone expected Nintendo to actually beat the competition and go $10 higher and have this insane discrepancy between digital and physical. I think what makes this price hike sting even more, though, is that Nintendo, even though they haven't really increased prices that much for their games previously, they have always been incredibly stingy when it comes to giving them price drops or discounts years after the fact. If you go into any store now, you'll probably see a copy of Mario Kart 9 Deluxe or The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, and they will be around the same price as they were when they launched back in the day. Even on the Nintendo digital shop, these games rarely come down in prices, getting at best a small % discount every year when we near the holiday season. Because of that, then, I think many people, including myself, are worried about what this means for these games going forward. Are we looking at a reality where, for the next 8 years or so, Mario Kart World is priced at around $80 consistently? And again, as if I need to drive this point home, that's if you want to buy it digitally. It's going to be even more if you want to get this game on physical cartridge. What's also a little bit frustrating about this is that, in a way, it's classic Nintendo. Nintendo, despite releasing some of the coziest and cuddliest and downright best games you will ever play, have a history of anti-consumer tactics like this that mostly just get brushed to the side. There might be a little bit of controversy when they're first announced, but ultimately they kind of come down to people, myself included again, going, it's just Nintendo. That's just what Nintendo does. We've seen it, for instance, when they engaged in artificial scarcity to increase demand around their products. We saw it at the time when they released a Mario collection and then just arbitrarily pulled it from stores a few months later. And of course, we've seen it in constant re-releases and ports of old games at the start of every new console generation, even if you've bought those games previously. Likewise, the fact that not only has the digital price of some of these games gone up, but the physical price is even higher, I think that stings in particular because it kind of puts to bed the argument that some of these studios were making like a decade ago when we first started to see a major shift towards digital sales and digital games. Back then, the argument was, hey, in the long run, this is going to be so pro-consumer because it'll mean that the publishers and the developers won't have to charge as much for their games because they're not having to pay either to make the cartridges or the discs and the boxes, distribute those to sellers, and have those sellers take a cut of the profits. The idea, in theory, was that if everything was centralized on a digital platform, publishers and developers wouldn't have to charge as much because they'd be reaping a higher profit percentage. But even before this announcement, that's not been true, has it? And I think it's important to note as well that this definitely is not happening in a vacuum. This isn't just a Nintendo fan's problem. This is a problem for all gamers. And that's because the last time games went up in price, which was the start of this generation, less than 5 years ago, the argument for why most publishers started to adopt the now standard $70 price point for new games was that, well, everyone else is doing it. We saw companies hide behind the fact that they weren't the ones to introduce the price hike. They were just following market trends and had to do what was best for their business with everyone else switching around them so they didn't have to fall behind. In my opinion, it is an extremely convenient excuse, but it is one that many analysts have been worried would be rolled out again this year, but not because of the Nintendo Switch 2. That's because before Nintendo Showcase, a lot of people were wondering whether Grand Theft Auto 6, the upcoming mega release from Rockstar, was going to establish a new norm for priced boxed games. Many people were hypothesizing about what would happen if GTA would come out and establish a new baseline, maybe $80 or $90 or hell, even $100 going forward. That's because, like Nintendo, Grand Theft Auto would get away with it. Of course, you would have people saying that's an absolutely ridiculous price, they're not paying that much money for a single game, but Grand Theft Auto is Grand Theft Auto. It has that staying power. People would buy it. Rockstar could charge whatever they wanted, and it would still sell millions upon millions upon millions of copies. The surprise then is that Rockstar wasn't actually the first out the gate to try this, but that it's Nintendo with the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World. And every time the price of modern games comes up, there is one argument that's always touted by some fans and mostly the executives behind these video game companies. And that's the fact that, yeah, video game pricing has remained relatively stagnant for decades now. It hasn't really risen with inflation, and we're still buying games for around what they used to cost in the 1990s. Executives have rolled out that argument for actual decades at this point, at least a good few console generations, to prove that, hey, they're actually doing us a favor. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I've never bought that idea. I've never bought the idea that game prices have to increase for a few reasons. One is that the way games are consumed now is not the same as they were consumed in the 90s. Back then, you had only the standard boxed game to bring revenue in. Now you have so many revenue streams that not only make up for games not increasing in their base price, but bring in so much more money than that deficit ever would have. You've got microtransactions in some of the biggest games in the world in some annual releases that help to bring in billions upon billions of dollars. Those different revenue streams have helped gaming become the most dominant form and successful form of entertainment. And yes, while the market is a little stagnant now and isn't growing at the rate it has been over the past few decades, this argument definitely precedes that. This is all on top of subscriptions as well, including Game Pass or PS Plus like services, as well as just paying for online gaming in general. And I know one of the counter arguments is that it's not the same as comparing it to the industry in the 90s because game budgets in particular have ballooned exponentially. But again, I don't want to go full Peter Parker on you, but I kind of missed the part where that's my problem. Nobody asked these companies to balloon budgets to the point where games now cost $250 million a minimum to make. We have seen games that cost a fraction of that sell incredibly well and become major hits. The budgets on that level are not the requirement. You don't need that level of investment every single time. Hey, I like it when Rockstar releases a Grand Theft Auto or a Red Dead Redemption that costs a ridiculous amount of money, but not every single studio has to follow or try to achieve that model to get their own success stories. Now, there is one more important thing to mention about this story, and I'm not going to spend too long on it because, frankly, I'm not an economist. I'm not as knowledgeable on this topic as many other people out there, but I am taking this information from people who actually know what they're talking about. And that's that the Financial Times, via a write-up by Video Games Chronicle, suggests that this price increase, not only to the games but to the Switch 2 itself, could actually be in anticipation of incoming tariffs that are being implemented by the American government. The Financial Times spoke to a bunch of experts from across the globe, and one Japanese expert suggested that these price increases were actually in anticipation of these tariffs coming into effect by Nintendo, who previously, I think it was until last night that they were formally announced, didn't know exactly how hard they were going to hit or how they were going to be implemented, so put the prices up just in case something was going to affect them. Again, that's a little bit out of my expertise, but it is worth noting because people much smarter than I have been worried about this reality for a good few months now, suggesting that if Nintendo is thinking about this, that other companies may be following suit as well and be changing their pricing models going forward. Overall, though, I just think this is a huge shame. I'm not a huge Nintendo fan myself. I have nothing against the company. It's just not where I play the most of my experiences. But even I was watching the presentation last night, impressed. I was thinking suddenly, after not caring all of that much, yeah, I might have to get this console. Between the likes of Mario Kart World and some of the new features that were added to the console itself, not to mention essentially a Bloodborne 2 style experience, I went from being not that bothered to wondering how I could pre-order this thing day one. But the subsequent reveal of just how much some of these games are going to cost, it brought me right back down to earth, and that's a shame. No one wants that footnote after the end of such an impressive show. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you as worried about the price hikes as I am? Or is this just a case of Nintendo gonna do what Nintendo gonna do?